Welcome back everyone to the Wrestling Association of the Mid-South, the WAM, on our local to global journey here in 1931 based in Mark Northern's Effganic Genesis mod. The last time you saw us, we were upgrading our size, stepping into the small size will bring many changes to this company, and we're going to address just about all of those here in this episode as we continue to head to the end of 1931. We are in late September, and we've got a lot to get into. The first of those changes being the implementation of a new show, Wham! Fortnite Fisticuffs. This will be our bi-weekly show that's going to allow us to compete with that rapid production that SPW has got. Now this show is considered our A show. It's only going to run 1 hour though, and this is going to be less frills, more matches, and our monthly event, the Amazing Grappling Spectacle, is going to remain kind of the big show of the month, where we wrap up a lot of storylines and continue that through segments and promos and whatnot, whereas Fortnite Fisticuffs is going to remain no-nonsense matches, more focused on that, as with the clean endings and everything. We've talked about a product change, and I think we're going to implement that, but we're not going to implement everything all at once we've hit this small stage. And we talked about keeping the progression quick, and will still allow us to progress quickly, but this will be able to build up some guys' momentum, their popularity, their skills in the ring, and we can employ some weekly guys. We can employ some jobbers or local workers or something like that to amplify the growth there. So we're going to see how this goes, and if we have to make any changes, of course we could do that, but that is the plan for Fortnite Fisticuffs. And since we are holding this event every 2 weeks, we cannot make this an actual TV show, though we will be getting into that here in just a moment. And as you can see, we've got the ticket pricing as cheap to continue to promote those popularity gains. So running 3 shows a month, we might hit our cap for popularity growth, so we might end up changing the ticket pricing around eventually, but that's what we've got for now. And this will be the more common occurring event, but the WAM, our monthly event, the Amazing Grappling Spectacle, will still hold that higher spot, that higher level of priority and significance. And of course, the next step is then going to be employ a broadcasting company to not only broadcast the Fortnite Fisticuffs, but also our monthly event, the Amazing Grappling Spectacle. We're going to begin negotiations with KCDY, and we're not in the age of actually being on television, so these wrestling shows are going to be broadcasted through radio waves. And KCDY is going to be the first one that we negotiate with, and since all of our shows are still considered as events, we can just negotiate 4 events in a broad term. We'll start out with a 1-year deal, and it would be far too expensive to take this late night slot, as they would want us to pay $10,000 per show just to take this time slot, and we would have to produce a show quality, getting a show rating of 41 every single time, which with the way that this roster is right now in this day and age, I'm not confident. So we're going to go with the graveyard. We can definitely hit 25 every show, no problem, and we don't have to pay anything to get on their air. We're going to stretch the revenue split and see just what we can get away with, and we're going to top out at 35%, and we're going to go ahead and move forward with this deal, hoping that this will be enough. It is, and now we've got KCDY broadcasting the WAM shows. We're going to see just what the bill looks like with one broadcaster right now, but I do plan to eventually move into more specific stations. As you can see, SPW's making some ground in Mexico. I want to get in Mexico as well, and then of course across the rest of the United States. So we're going to see just what we got to do to get that taken care of. But for now, KCDY will allow us to obviously continue to broadcast in the Mid-South when we do decide to travel out of our home region, and of course in Midwest, where we are starting to build some popularity as well. And you can see down here in the red that we've got a message stating that the production department currently has warnings regarding potential penalties. We'll go ahead and open that up, and that is strictly because our production values and every other category basically does not match up against SPW. As you can see, SPW's got amateur, small, and semi-pro, where we are just limited, volunteers, and amateur in those. So SPW basically outclasses us in every way that you can, except for the music right now. So now that we are broadcasting, we are at least going to upgrade our production values, and that is going to move us from a $150 monthly bill to a $500 monthly bill, plus an initial fee of $500 as well. But that is now at amateur, which isn't going to get us penalized or anything like that. We're not going to upgrade the live event experience because we're not making that much money every single show. At least not right now, we're not. The upgrade would cost $2,000 per night, and we're just going to leave that alone. We're going to stick with our volunteers for the live event experience. And upgrading to the semi-pro broadcast quality would be another $500 per night. We're currently paying $100, so we would be upping our bill $900 per night in the production values and quality and everything like that, as well as what we're going to be paying for our broadcasting company. So we're going to put a hold on upgrading this to semi-pro just to see what we end up looking like after our first maybe month or so with broadcasting shows. We do have $31,000 available, so we do have a good chunk of change, but spoiler alert, that may be subject to change here soon with some outside external forces happening. And as we prepare for the next show, Princeton Willard, who has worked for us once before, I think he just took part in a Glory Gauntlet match. He's come up, he's local to the area, and he's asked if we could be able to use him tonight, and I think we're actually going to take him up on it. Take him up on a one-night deal for $20, and we will see him take a loss somewhere along the lines tonight to somebody. Raymond Rickman has also asked if we could use him tonight. However, he's got a gloomy personality, whereas Princeton Willard has got a party animal personality, so unfortunately there's no spots available. And now we've got Angus Wellington turning up very late, breaking the locker room rules. However, he is the owner's child, so there will be no action. And it had a small negative impact upon Angus. The man was looking for some attention, he didn't get any. Rager Kurzog is getting a lot of heat in the back, and we're just going to give him a slap on the wrist. However, with that all out of the way, we are ready to get into our event, the Amazing Grappling Spectacle, and we are at the 80th edition at that. We've got a pre-show match, just 6-man tag team action, Diego Bergen, Sebastian Morales, and Super Monkey teaming up to take on Brian Hatcher, Wayne Blankenship, and Christopher Hartwell. And we see Diego Bergen, Sebastian Morales, and Super Monkey pick up a victory here. Not a bad match. Super Monkey with a good performance of 48. Sebastian Morales at 52. Nice numbers there, standing out in the pre-show. Now, as our show gets going, we've got August Washburn just taking an ass beating by Elijah Mays, as Elijah Mays does not take long to force August Washburn to submit with that guillotine choke. We know it does some damage, it does some work, and it has picked up the junior heavyweight champion quite a few victories along his way to becoming champion. But we've got a gimmick change to take care of with August Washburn, as his gimmick has gotten quite stale and he didn't get a good rating to begin with. We're now going to bring his gimmick into a beaten into lunacy as he excels at the offbeat, the unusual gimmick. So we'll see how this one goes. It's still got a rating of poor, but at least it's not awful. But like we said, Elijah Mays with a dominant performance, in-ring performance of 45 compared to Washburn's 21, and this match gets a segment rating of 28. But after the match, we've got the great Matsuo cutting another promo that is difficult to understand, but the fans are able to make out the words, "Wham Heavyweight Champion," as we know that Elijah Mays is the junior heavyweight champion, but he's got his eyes set on something else. Now we've got another match. Now moving into our next match, the ladies, one-on-one. We got dinged for the ending of this match because Ivy Baldridge actually picks up the victory with a fast roll-up. Now this would catch Gabriela Suarez off guard. She was actually hoping to get some assistance from Emilio, but Emilio came up short there, as Emilio and Hermenegildo Ramirez were both ringside for the respective ladies. Gabriela Suarez did get an in-ring performance of 37, whereas Ivy Baldridge just got a 29, so not terrible work from the ladies as they continue to establish just the women's division in general. But after the match, we have a segment, as issues between the Suarez siblings continue as Gabriela takes what she considers an embarrassing loss to Ivy Baldridge, blaming her brother for getting in her way. The two would leave the ring separately, though given their recent history, the crowd has a tough time choosing whether or not to believe these tensions are genuine, and we know that the Suarez siblings have kind of teased issues before, and it ended up being a work, it ended up being a hoax and just mind games to get the upper hand on their opponent. So we'll see just what comes out from here. Are these issues genuine or not? Now moving into our next match, we've got Albie Dewberry taking care of business as he picks up the victory over Chris Brownfield in just 8 minutes. And we didn't see a specific run-in before the match, but we see more development as Albie Dewberry becomes more and more aggressive in his in-ring style, much more aggressive than what we saw before, that's for sure. Albie Dewberry taking care of business here with an in-ring performance of 43, Chris Brownfield at 27, not terrible, but we get a match rating of 36 altogether, as Albie Dewberry just continues to build some momentum upon his return to the Wham. And these matches we're waiting for a barn buster here, but we don't have anything stupendous as of yet. We got Chuck Wellington in a bit of a tune-up match, taking on Randy Edson, picking up the victory over Randy Edson, not without the assistance of his Wellington Dynasty brothers, Duke and Angus at ringside. And to catch you up from the last episode, Bronson Fraley has been issued a challenge by Chuck Wellington at the first event of 1932, and Chuck Wellington intends on bringing down Bronson Fraley, kind of getting a little bit of revenge, so to speak, just for the way that Bronson Fraley has treated the Wellington brothers, and for Bronson Fraley kind of turning his back on the Wellington brothers despite receiving really poor treatment from the Wellington brothers, the ungrateful Wellington dynasty. But Chuck Wellington, he's looking confident, he's looking ready to face Bronson Fraley, but we all know that Randy Edson is not the competitor that Bronson Fraley is. So, like we said, segment rating of 26, nothing crazy here, and we're going to move on. Our next segment, near ringside, we get an interview as Cody Tower takes a moment to welcome Benson Sandy back to the Wham. Benson Sandy takes a moment to express his gratitude for a warm welcome back to the company, and begins to explain his intentions of becoming a star the right way this time around. However, he would not get far as Neil Allman would interrupt the segment, bringing attention to his main event victory at the previous show, demanding that he is next in line for another shot at Rahan Marlowe. Neil Allman's tirade was short-lived though, as Woodrow Gunter would put an end to this tangent, reminding Allman that he was not alone in his victory at the last event, setting the stage for the scheduled #1 contenders match between the two later this evening. And this is just a way to announce the main event, that we've got Neil Allman and Woodrow Gunter duking it out mano a mano to determine who will be the next man to face Rahan Marlowe, as both of these gentlemen, alongside Rahan Marlowe, picked up a big victory in 6-man tag team action in the main event last show against the Pride. And this is unfortunate. I didn't think it was going to be a good match anyway, but due to the ending of our match, we get a segment rating of 7. And this is where I struggle, because I just said earlier in the show that we're not going to make this product change immediately right away. However, getting hit with penalties like this because of our product, because of the lack of interest in these endings from our fans, that makes a big deal. Now, but let's talk about what happened here. You see that the match descended into chaos, and we're going to go over that here in just a moment. I can't believe it got a segment rating of 7 despite some decent wrestling. 31s from both of these guys, Black Demon and Turner Spittler, crowd rating at 23. Chris Brownfield even did some good work at ringside for Turner Spittler as his manager. However, in an attempt to establish control of the match, Masked Hammer begins to aid Turner Spittler with the referee distracted. This would not last long, as the Dark Carnival would come down to the ring to prevent any kind of shenanigans from Hammer and Spittler. The commotion outside of the ring would be enough for the referee to call off the match once it began to spill in the ring, involving Black Demon and Spittler. Masked Hammer and Turner Spittler would flee, leaving Black Demon in the ring with the Dark Carnival. Another quiet meeting took place, and Black Demon would leave the ring shortly after, without any kind of gesture to the Carnival being made. So, this match was called off by Kenny Wiles, by the honorable referee Kenny Wiles. Kenny Wiles had to throw it out because the Dark Carnival came down and did not allow Masked Hammer to pull any kind of shenanigans for Turner Spittler in this match. However, this would just become an even bigger issue. And like we said, Kenny Wiles would have to call off the match once it would spill into the ring, and Black Demon, a hard read here. We don't know if he's appreciative. We don't know how he feels towards the Dark Carnival. All we know is that he left without them here in this segment, after Masked Hammer and Turner Spittler fleet, of course. So the Dark Carnival was left standing in the ring as Black Demon chucked up the deuces. Segment rating of 38, which is a lot better than the 7 that for the match that it followed. But man, that hurt a little bit. But we're gonna move on. And another really poor match. I shouldn't have put Princeton Willard at this point in the card. Just a little bit of fumbling on my end. Not what you want to see, but we do get Fritz Hattendorf defeating Princeton Willard with a dominant performance at that. However, due to Princeton Willard's rustiness, this match really suffered. Fritz Hattendorf does have an in-ring performance of 35. He gains a little bit of experience, a little bit of exposure here, getting the chance to compete in that one-on-one opportunity, as we know that the Pride took a big loss last month at the last show, but another poor match would follow with some explanation, as while picking up the victory, Fritz Hattendorf is still under fire from Friedrich Herzog, receiving reprimanding for not being aggressive enough. The former champion is fired up and visibly unhappy after suffering a loss at the last event, and takes out some of those frustrations in a demonstration for Fritz, picking up a beaten Princeton Willard and brutalizing him further. Tensions are high, but the Pride leave the ring area together. So we've lost our crowd a little bit due to back-to-back poor matches, but the former champion, the machine, the force that is Friedrich Herzog, he just basically tells Fritz Hattendorf that he's got to step his game up a little bit, and providing a little bit of example for him as he continued to brutalize Princeton Willard. Heading into the main event, hopefully this main event can save us because we need it, but we've got Rahan Marlowe making his way ringside to get a front row seat for this #1 contendership match. Segment rating of 42, and I like to see that. Now we get, and fortunately, this match does deliver. We get a segment rating of 45 between these two, but we would see Woodrow Gunter picking up the clean victory over Neil Allman, and we want to see these boys go out and steal the show. They did that, setting the pace for the night with the best show of the night. Woodrow Gunter with an in-ring performance of 45, and Neil Allman getting a 50 in his loss. But of course, that's not the end of the show. We see Neil Allman beside himself after coming up short against Woodrow Gunter. Struggling to deal with his emotions, Neil Allman goes berserk and carries out an attack on Cody Tower as Tower announces the winner of the match. Woodrow Gunter, Rahan Marlowe, and other members of the locker room attempt to restrain Neil Allman, but the damage has been done as the show comes to a close. Segment rating of 46, and we get 3 solid segments to close out the night, and hopefully that is enough to alleviate the poor matches that we had on the card. But the big story of the night is Neil Allman goes berserk, becomes unhinged, and attacks Cody Tower, the man who was just doing his job and announcing the victory of Woodrow Gunter. We do get away with an overall rating of 40, but our show appeared worse because our broadcast quality level is slightly worse than one of our rivals, and our live event experience being worse than one of our rivals. Now, that sucks because if we don't shell out another $2,500 per show, we're going to continue to see these penalties. So I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but as you can see, our popularity does increase in 2 regions, which that is a plus. We're going to provide some praise to Black Demon, Masked Hammer, and Super Monkey, hoping that we can improve their morales a little bit. And as you can see, our show costs leaving us at costing us $5,000, and we are now in the hole $2,000, whereas we were profiting each show. So we may have to slow our roll with adding too many more broadcasters, because we gotta make money at the end of each show. That's basic. But we're also going to take a look at our ticket prices and whatnot after the entire month of October and see what we can do. We do go from 13 to 14 in the Midwest, and that Midwest is probably going to be a big part of our next growth. And the Midwest is going to be a focus area on our next little bit of growth. Now we are heading into our first ever edition of the Fortnite Fisticuffs, and we've got some pre-show incidents. Unfortunately, the sound system that we use for our shows has gone AWOL. The live event can still go ahead, but there will be a small penalty to our overall show rating, as if we didn't need more of that. But sound system or not, we're going to jump right into this event. The very first edition of the Fortnite Fisticuffs And like we said, this is going to be a little more no nonsense, no frills, just kind of getting into some in-ring action. However, we've got a pre-show match between Elijah Mays and Wayne Blankenship. Now, I just needed to get Elijah Mays on the card because we didn't actually have anything for him to do in this event that was significant to any of our stories at this time. But we do see a nice pre-show matchup of 41 rating as Elijah Mays takes care of business over Wayne Blankenship. We see Benson Sandy and Brian Hatcher. This one was a pre-show match because Benson Sandy is an unimportant worker as we try to establish some momentum and some identity for him. He will stay on the pre-shows until he is 1, no longer rusty, and 2, renowned and popular enough to be on the main card without any kind of penalization. But we get into the actual show as we've got Woodrow Gunter and Riker Zucker near ringside with Woodrow Gunter cutting a promo. Gunter aims to send a message. Neil Allman's actions at the last event will not be tolerated. Gunter talks down on Allman as a man, stating only a coward would go after staff and faculty. Gunter apologizes to the fans in attendance, but this would be interrupted by Rahan Marlowe. Marlowe cites his willingness to restrain Neil Allman, but urges Woodrow Gunter not to kid himself, accusing Gunter of not actually caring about the fans, claiming Gunter is trying to portray an image he doesn't actually fit. Tensions were high between the two future combatants, but the champion would make his way back behind the curtain, segment rating of 45 to get the night going. Now we get a decent match, segment rating of 28, as we do see some improvement from Chuck Wellington. You'll love to see that. Chuck Wellington picks up a victory over Chris Brownfield, the much smaller Chris Brownfield than Chuck Wellington. Don't forget that Chuck Wellington is a heavyweight, Chris Brownfield is a junior heavyweight. But they've got great chemistry and it showed in their performances, so that's a plus there. And Chuck Wellington basically just takes care of business here as he builds some momentum heading into his big match with Bronson Fraley. And it is the Wellington boys, we've got to see some kind of spotlight on them. Chuck Wellington takes a moment to grab the microphone. He would then preface his speech that if Neil Allman made any interruptions, he'd be fired immediately. Knowing he now had the floor, Chuck would then display his confidence and his ability to bring down Bronson Fraley. Chuck would take this time to slander Fraley, explaining that it will be quite a while before Fraley's face will be seen around here again, but ensures the fans proper entertainment as he will continue his slew of matches in preparation for the big showdown in 1932. So, just kind of stating that Bronson Fraley will not be a part of the match cards here in this build-up to their match. He's going to try to keep Bronson Fraley as cold as possible while he builds as much momentum as he can. Moving on into the next match, we've got some tag team action as the Pride, Friedrich Herzog and Fritz Hattendorf, pick up the victory. Of course they would. Why would they not? Over August Washburn and Randy Edson. Friedrich Herzog, of course, getting the pin, and Friedrich Herzog was head and shoulders above everyone else with his in-ring performance of 52. Fritz Hattendorf did have a 35, Randy Edson at 27, and August Washburn at 22. All in all, we get a match rating of 38. Not bad considering we've got two of our very low card workers here going up against Herzog and Hattendorf, and just more leadership shown by Friedrich Herzog as he guides his team to victory. And the Pride continues to build some momentum, and Fritz Hattendorf continues to get some more experience. Neil Allman defeating Diego Bergen. It was a little random, but Diego Bergen is a good enough competitor to hold his own. We see a segment rating of 43, Neil Allman with a nice job, in-ring performance of 48, Bergen at 32, and Diego Bergen is considered a bit of an outsider, so he kind of just stood up for the other outsiders in the WAM, and ended up facing Neil Allman despite coming up short. He does raise his stock for himself with a decent performance here and a good match rating. Not a bad match at all, but hopefully it's going to get better as it continues. Now getting into our next match, the main event, we've got Albie Dewberry and Hermenegildo Ramirez going one-on-one. But before that match gets going, we see that Joe Cartwright making his way to the ringside area as he intends on spectating this match up close. He is not 100%, he is not medically cleared to compete, and he would make this entrance after Albie Dewberry and Hermenegildo Ramirez had already made their entrance, and Joe Cartwright's presence would shake Albie Dewberry. However, the rival would attempt to remain composed and focused on the task at hand, and that is a match with Hermenegildo Ramirez for the shot to face Elijah Mays for the Junior Heavyweight Championship. Now we would see a good match as we got a segment rating of 48 between these two. Hermenegildo Ramirez once again coming in big time with an in-ring performance of 58. This man continues to impress every time he comes out into the ring, albeit Dewberry with a very nice job keeping up with an in-ring performance of 45. However, this match could have been even better if we had a little bit more psychology, as this match suffered from the lack thereof. However, Joe Cartwright would never actually interfere in this match or provide a true direct distraction, but Albie Dewberry could not stop looking over at Joe Cartwright. He couldn't shake the fact that Joe Cartwright was in attendance, and this would be enough to allow Hermenegildo Ramirez to just overtake the match and eventually take the victory and earn himself a shot at Elijah Mays. And after the match, Albie Dewberry would just be furious with Joe Cartwright for even just coming out to ringside to watch this match, even though Joe Cartwright, again, did nothing to incite any kind of distraction or interference at Albie Dewberry's detriment. So a little bit of mind games without even trying to play mind games from Joe Cartwright, and it ended up costing Albie Dewberry a shot at the Junior Heavyweight Championship, and that is the stem of Dewberry's anger to begin with. So we can only imagine what's going to come from that. Nice match rating of 48 to finish off the night, and that's going to get us up to an overall rating of 38. And due to the nature, I should have put more of a focus just in my road agent notes about progressing storylines. I didn't do that, and it ended up biting us in the ass a little bit, as fans were disappointed that the storylines further during the show, none really had any dramatic stakes. This is going to be something that we're going to have to tackle, just because the intent of this show really is to get guys in the ring, get them to improve their skills, get them to gain some popularity. It is almost like a B show without being a B show. So it's just something that we're going to have to navigate, and of course we continue to get dinged because of our production values, but that's just something that we can't fix right now. I'm grateful that this is still an event, so we do have the chance to address some of our guys after the show. And we only lose $730 from this show. Our broadcast revenue is not good. It is not paying off to broadcast our shows right now. And our show costs is right around $4,000, and we lose some more money with this show. But we're just going to keep plugging away, and I think we're going to turn things around, no problem. I was taking a look at some of the available workers that are not too far away from the Mid-South, as now that our finances are once again in question, I don't want to be shelling out too much money on travel. But Kitahachi Kukui he's primarily based out of Japan. He's a Kinky wrestler. He's been with Kinky for quite a while, but he has moved over to the Midwest, so that is minimal payment for travel, if any. And I think I'm going to go ahead, bring him on, or at least send him an offer to bring him on. We'll just do a 1-year contract and see how things go with Kitahachi Kukui. Hopefully he is willing to join the WHAM. He would join us in the heavyweight division, as he is 6'2", 229. Our one big development that we've got coming up is the Bronson Fraley contract coming to an end, and we are not going to let that actually come to an end. We, of course, are going to re-sign him. We've got him on a $30 a show contract, so we will continue to honor that. But we're going to set this contract duration to 2 years. And of course, he does accept the exclusive handshake deal, and he will be staying with the WHAM for 2 more years, at least. And we also see that FNP has made an offer to Elijah Mays to bring him on. We do not have Elijah Mays under any kind of exclusive contract, so as long as SPW doesn't offer to work with him, we are good, and I don't mind him going to get some extra work at FNP. And now getting right into the next event, wasting no time. We've got a few pre-show matches to go over before the actual event itself, but we've got Princeton Willard back on a 1-night deal, taking a loss here to Masked Hammer, and it was a wise decision to keep him in the pre-show because he's still rusty, and even in a 7-minute match, this bout dragged in the middle. Masked Hammer does pick up the victory with a performance of 28. Willard still down at 13, and this match only gets 17 for its rating. We then have the debut of Kitahachi Kukui in this pre-show match, teaming alongside Benson Sandy, picking up a victory over Brian Hatcher and Randy Edson. Not a ton of story. This is not the making of a permanent team between Kukui and Sandy, but it is a safe way to get this man in a debut, as well as getting some more in-ring action for Benson Sandy. who as you can see is also still rusty. So 29s between 3 of the 4 competitors, the fourth being Randy Edson at 25. And this match just gets a segment rating of 26, but we get into the actual show itself with a segment rating of 42, as Christopher Hartwell is interviewed by a recovering Cody Tower, and Christopher Hartwell has a bone to pick with the Wham and its fans. Hartwell demands he is shown more respect in this company, and cites his championship in FNP, suggesting his ability and star power. Christopher Hartwell claims he is constantly overlooked, but he is making a challenge to the junior heavyweight champion Elijah Mays. Hartwell cites his desire to become a multi-champion and encourages Mays to oblige. The champion would in fact be answered, with a determined-looking Elijah Mays making his way to the ring with no hesitation, and that match would commence. It would end in just 8 minutes 5 seconds after Elijah Mays forced Christopher Hartwell to submit, and Elijah Mays hasn't defended his junior heavyweight championship in a while, so we got him here in this match, making defense number 4 in a match rating of 36. Elijah Mays got a performance of 42 and Christopher Hartwell got 31. Not bad here, but we know that Christopher Hartwell, his popularity lies in the northeastern territories of the United States, and we are in the mid-south, so he doesn't get that same reception that he does up north. But moving into the next match, Black Demon just picking up a victory over August Washburn. Not a ton of story going on with this one, just establishing Black Demon as a force to be reckoned with, as he gets an in-ring performance of 35, and this match gets a rating of 28. Moving along, we've got the return to in-ring action, to singles competition I suppose, of Super Monkey coming back at Turner Spittler looking for a bit of revenge, as Turner Spittler and Masked Hammer definitely held the upper hand over Super Monkey in their last few encounters, and that trend will continue because Turner Spittler picks up another victory here in just 7 minutes 48 seconds, and Turner Spittler with an in-ring performance of 32. I thought it would be a little bit better, but Super Monkey gets a 40, and that is not too bad. All in all, we get a match rating of 31. I knew this match would be a banger. So we have a tag team match here between some junior heavyweights, Albie Dewberry and Emilio Suarez, taking on Hermenegildo Ramirez and Joe Cartwright. Some of our best in-ring performers getting together here, and we've got some storylines behind it to kind of further and bolster the effect that it has. And all in all, we get a match rating of 50, and we see Hermenegildo Ramirez and Joe Cartwright pick up the victory, as Albie Dewberry and Emilio kind of struggle to get along and gel and mesh super well because Emilio Suarez was dealing with the issues that he's got with his sister Gabriella going on. So all in all, Hermenegildo Ramirez and Joe Cartwright able to capitalize, and Joe Cartwright with a nice performance of 47, but Hermenegildo Ramirez is the star of this match as he got a performance of 63. Now moving into our main event, we've got Rahan Marlowe, our heavyweight champion, in action, though he was not defending his championship, against Sebastian Morales, in just some action, some exhibition action to get our champion on the card. He gets an in-ring performance of 49 on his way to a victory over Sebastian Morales, who gets a nice in-ring performance of 54 but comes up short in the match. And these two have got great chemistry, so expect to see them in the ring in some fashion again in the future. And though it's not stated down here, we would see both Neil Allman and Woodrow Gunter make their way ringside just to spectate and put some pressure on the heavyweight champion. So altogether we get an overall rating of 47, increasing our popularity in one region, and that will be the Mid-South, because we actually did not broadcast this show. I wanted to see what the difference would be if we could still make money without broadcasting the shows, which I think we would. And yes, we do in fact make $2,794, so if the finances do become an issue, we can just not broadcast some of our shows, because we know that our broadcast contract is not set up to satisfy any specific number of shows, so we do have some flexibility there. And our popularity does shoot up from 35 to 36 here in the Mid-South. And we do see that Elijah Mays accepted the contract to join FNP. It would be really funny to see in a bit of ulterior canon, I guess, if Elijah Mays was able to take the nationwide championship from Christopher Hartwell and FNP. So that will be something that I'm going to keep an eye out for. And we are once again ready to get right into another episode of the Fortnite Fisticuffs. Still in Oklahoma City, but this time in front of 421 people. Our attendance continues to grow. You'll love to see it. Couple pre-show matches. Oscar Kohler picking up a victory over Randy Edson, and Randy Edson would actually have the better in-ring performance of the two, as he got a 28, whereas Kohler came away with a 25, but regardless, the big man picks up a victory. In our next match, really solid ratings, and that is to no surprise considering we see that we've got Hermenegildo Ramirez involved in this match. We got tag team action with Kitahachi Kukui and Ramirez teaming up against Hartwell and Benson Sandy. Benson Sandy and Kukui were just partners at the last event, but this time they are opponents. Benson Sandy still a little rusty, and we're hoping he will knock that rust off soon, but regardless, Hermenegildo Ramirez and Kitahachi Kukui came away victorious here in this pre-show match, segment rating of 43. Now to get the night going, we got Fritz Hattendorf defeating Brian Hatcher in just 7.5 minutes. Now this match was designed to go a little bit longer, a little bit beyond Fritz Hattendorf's comfort zone, because even if Friedrich Herzog is a mid-40s star who is maybe beyond improving his physical condition, Fritz Hattendorf is a young dude, and we can improve his stamina by just pushing him and putting him in matches that are a little bit longer than he would like. And hopefully we'll see an improvement in his stamina over time, but we do see a performance of 32, whereas Hatcher got 31, and all in all, this match does net a rating of 31. Moving into the next match, a handicap match, where we see Duke Wellington join his brother Chuck in in-ring competition, and August Washburn is the unlucky recipient of the booking of this match to take the loss here against those Wellington brothers. August Washburn starting to turn things around, and you see an in-ring performance of 22, Duke at 30, and his brother Chuck at 30 as well. Now moving into the next contest, a triple threat match where Black Demon would pick up the victory over Super Monkey and Wayne Blankenship, some junior heavyweight competition. And despite Black Demon being the one to come away with the victory, Super Monkey is actually the one to put in a really nice in-ring performance, as he got a 45 here. You could see that Wayne Blankenship was the one that took the loss, and Black Demon, of course, as we said, was the one to come away victorious. So we do get some good things going in this match here, despite not a ton of stakes behind it. Moving on into our next match, we see Turner Spittler taking on Craig Bean. The Dark Carnival has made its first imprint on Fortnite Fisticuffs here in this match. And if you remember back towards the beginning of the episode, Turner Spittler had a match with Black Demon that was more or less thrown out because of the involvement of the Dark Carnival. So this is one step into resolution of that whole situation, as Turner Spittler getting an opportunity to go one-on-one with a member of the Dark Carnival, this being Craig Bean, obviously. And these two do a pretty good job. Craig Bean, the man, is probably one of our most underrated gems here on the roster, because he just doesn't really give bad performances anymore. He comes away with an in-ring performance of 40, Turner Spittler at 31, and this match nets a rating of 35. However, Turner Spittler is the one to come away with the victory. And now we've got a big match here. Neil Allman, Sebastian Morales in tag team action against Rahan Marlowe and Woodrow Gunter. We get a match rating of 52 between our heavyweight stars. Rahan Marlowe is the star of this match with an in-ring performance of 58, his partner Woodrow Gunter at 45, Sebastian Morales at 55, and Neil Allman at 47. Now this is just a good match, not a ton of shenanigans here until the end. There are in fact some major shenanigans at the end, as Sebastian Morales is just cleaning house, taking over in this match, and truly establishing himself as maybe he should also be in consideration for getting another crack at Rahan Marlowe, despite coming up short 2 weeks ago. But Neil Allman gets a blind tag, takes advantage of the situation, and basically vultures the pin and victory, getting that little bit of spotlight and notoriety for himself, whereas Sebastian Morales is clearly the one that was carrying a great deal of momentum in the most crucial points of the match. But in the end, Neil Allman does make himself the one to secure the victory, which is a big deal for Neil Allman. And following the match, Sebastian Morales and Neil Allman share a tense confrontation in the middle of the ring while Marlowe and Gunter argue ringside. Sebastian Morales would extend a handshake despite Neil Allman clearly going into business for himself at the end of the match. Surprisingly, Neil Allman would refuse the handshake and make his way away from ringside. So we got Rahan Marlowe and Woodrow Gunter. They're going to be facing off for the heavyweight championship. They're arguing ringside. And then Neil Allman and Sebastian Morales, they share quite a tense confrontation as Neil Allman, who is more or less and always has been a good guy, a good dude, he actually refuses the handshake here from Sebastian Morales, and they're continuing to blur the lines of heel and face and who's a good guy, who's a bad guy, as we still, in a gameplay perspective, have not started acknowledging heels and faces yet. And so we're going to take advantage of that. We're going to play around with it a little bit. Is Neil Allman truly on that dark side? Is Rahan Marlowe truly worth rooting for? So we're going to continue to identify these things as we move along. But that does it for the show, and fortunately we do finish strong with our main event, and that's been a big part of the Fortnite Fisticuffs. Is just something that we got to do, is come in strong with our main events. Because we are going to utilize this show to get some of our lesser known guys in there, primarily taking some losses, but also to build the popularity of some middle tier guys, maybe make that jump from unimportant to recognizable, or even recognizable to well known. But overall, not a bad show here. And thanks to the fact that we did broadcast, we do increase our popularity in 2 regions, but we're going to be taking a hit financially, I'm sure. And we're going to continue to praise Black Demon, who is forever angry, or forever annoyed at least I should say, Turner Spiller, and Super Monkey as well. And we do lose money, but only losing $525. Now, we're only making $20 in broadcast revenue, but those ticket sales are phenomenal right now, and they're keeping us afloat, and I think we will be able to navigate these financial waters with the broadcasting situation. And as you can see, moving from 14 to 15 in the Midwest, and our next step is to start taking a look at the Southeast, but we'll see when we get there. We see in our mailbox, we see that Hermenegildo Ramirez has his contract coming to an end nearly in just 30 days. We're not going to let that happen, I can assure you that. Kitahachi Kukui has officially ended his tour with TWA, as well as another guy on our shortlist. And we had 1,176 folks tuning in to the radio broadcast of the Wham! Fortnite Fisticuffs. You'd love to see it. And we're going to send Hermenegildo Ramirez an exclusive handshake contract for 2 years, $20 a show, and I assume that he will accept that. And since our financial situation is something that I think we're going to be able to navigate, we are going to go ahead and upgrade our broadcast quality. It only increases our expenses by $400 per show. That is not as drastic as the $2,000 expense that the live event experience will start costing us, but it is something that we're just going to have to do eventually, because we can only sustain these penalties on our shows for so long. And Hermenegildo Ramirez does in fact accept our contract offer. You love to see it. Our most consistent, highest performer at this point in time. We have been able to build up a little bit of a stockpile of character ideas, and we're going to try to use a few of them on Black Demon, hopefully only a couple of them to get him out of this poor morale state. But we're going to start with the near certainty, and he's still annoyed. I swear this man will never not be annoyed. It's crazy. A safe bet, we're going to see if this helps him at all. It was a success. He's got great momentum now, so that is a plus. But we are just using all of our unspecified character ideas on this man. This one was a failure, and that's not going to help. That's unfortunate. But we've done everything that we can. We've offered him monetary incentive to be a little bit happier. We've given him a bunch of character ideas, post-show speeches, and so we're just going to have to hope that he doesn't go off the rails too much. Without further ado, it's time to get into the Amazing Grappling Spectacle 81, and this is going to be a big addition, and it feels even bigger with our bi-weekly show that we've implemented as kind of build-up for these monthly events. We've got a few matches in the pre-show, and we've got a tag team match to get those going. Benson, Sandy, and Super Monkey once again teaming up to face Wayne Blankenship and Christopher Hartwell. Another nice performance here from Super Monkey, who is really starting to establish some consistency. We just have got to get him in some kind of significant angle to get him featured each and every time on the card outside of the pre-show matches. But Super Monkey does get an in-ring performance of 50, Benson Sandy at 39 despite still being rusty, so that gives me hope for the future. Wayne Blankenship at 31 and Christopher Hartwell at 35, who has started to improve his performances now that he's being featured a little bit more consistently with those bi-weekly shows. All in all, we get a match rating of 40, though it doesn't matter because it is on our pre-show. Moving forward into the next match, which is part of the main show, Fritz Hattendorf opening us up against Randy Edson, and Fritz Hattendorf in convincing fashion taking care of business and defeating Randy Edson in just 6.5 minutes. Not bad numbers here, where Fritz gets a performance of 39, Randy Edson at 23, which is about where you'd expect from him, and we get a match rating of 34. However, despite the victory, Friedrich Herzog is once again going off on Fritz Hattendorf following a victory. Herzog claims Hattendorf isn't showing he has what it takes to be great, and Herzog would even go as far as ordering the referee to ring the bell, starting an impromptu match between Herzog and an already beaten Randy Edson. Only gets us a segment rating of 29 here, but we do see Friedrich Herzog force the referee to restart a match, and not really a restart, but start a new match, which is Herzog and Randy Edson. Herzog just beats up on Randy Edson, pins him, and collects the victory, the 1-2-3. And Kenny Lyles would then ring the bell. Herzog and Hattendorf would finally leave the ring area, while Herzog is scolding Fritz Hattendorf. But in this match, we would see Friedrich Herzog with an in-ring performance of 63, Randy Edson at 24, and this match would actually earn a segment rating of 41. All in all, this second impromptu match was actually a plus for the whole segment. Moving into the next match, we have what should have been a singles match between Chuck Wellington and Kitahachi Kikui. However, Chuck Wellington certainly had his hands full, and things were not going the way that he thought it would, thus signaling Duke Wellington to come in and aid his brother, and they are the owner's son, so Kenny Lyles really couldn't do a ton about it as far as enforcing the rules or anything like that, and they basically got away with some shenanigans here. But altogether, Chuck Wellington would be the one to pick up the victory, and this match rating would get a segment rating of 29. Kikui had an in-ring performance of 28, Duke Wellington at 29, and Chuck Wellington at 30. Now we see another good match here between Turner Spittler and Masked Hammer taking on Craig Bean and Black Demon, who is not an official member of the Dark Carnival here, but they put on a nice match collectively. Segment rating of 40, Masked Hammer at 44, Turner Spittler 32, Black Demon at 40, and Craig Bean at 38. Now on paper here, it just says that Masked Hammer pinned Craig Bean and picked up the victory for his team. However, there's a little bit more to it than that. And that would actually take place as Black Demon would walk out on Craig Bean in this match, leaving him high and dry by himself and basically left to compete in a handicap match, and ultimately Masked Hammer and Turner Spittler are able to take advantage. And we have a segment following this to kind of wrap this whole thing up, as the Dark Carnival is blindsided by Black Demon's decision. Without saying a word, Black Demon has made it known that he has no interest in being in anyone's group, and that he intends to do what is best for him, and only him. And we get a segment rating of 32 just for this little bit, and just to solidify that Black Demon does not want to be a part of the Dark Carnival. Now this back half of the match card is got some serious potential to have some good matches. The first being between Albie Dewberry and Joe Cartwright, a 2 out of 3 falls match, and they do come in clutch with a segment rating of 47 between these two, both of them getting in-ring performances of 47, and Joe Cartwright picking up a victory much to Albie Dewberry's dismay in this 2 out of 3 falls match. Joe Cartwright was finally healthy enough to come back to in-ring action. Albie Dewberry, he had a receipt coming to him, and despite a really competitive contest, Joe Cartwright would be the one to come out on top here. Moving into the next match, another segment rating of 47, this time Neil Allman coming out on top against Sebastian Morales in another one-on-one contest. We've seen these two face off plenty of times in the past, this time Neil Allman actually coming out on top against Sebastian Morales. And we know that Neil Allman has been a little unhinged as of late in his pursuit to not just become heavyweight champion, but to rid the heavyweight championship from someone who is not naturally from or a part of the WHAM. We know that he's a little bit tribalistic in that way, and he's on a mission to basically oust anyone who he considers to be an outsider. And he gets a victory over Viva La Lucha's Sebastian Morales here. Now moving into the next match, the Junior Heavyweight Championship is on the line, and we get a phenomenal match between Hermenegildo Ramirez and Elijah Mays. And despite a really good performance from Ramirez at 63 and a match rating of 57, Elijah Mays, who had an in-ring performance of 46, would actually be the one to come out on top here. Elijah Mays continues his momentum and continues the trend of him just dominating his opponents, overpowering his opponents, despite Hermenegildo Ramirez posing the biggest threat thus far, as it took 13 and a half minutes for this match to end, but Hermenegildo Ramirez did eventually submit to the guillotine choke. Now these two have got great chemistry, and that leads me to believe that we will see them facing off in the future. But moving on to the main event, the heavyweight championship match between Woodrow Gunter and Rahan Marlow. It has been brewing, it has been in the makings for quite a while. Rahan Marlow defending his championship against Woodrow Gunter successfully once more. Rahan Marlow continues an impressive reign as champion as he makes his 8th defense against all formidable competitors in a number of different scenarios. And the interesting thing about Rahan Marlow, despite being generally dislikable, he has picked up all of his victories in clean fashion. So we see a segment rating of 52, not the best match of the night, but still not a bad match by any means. Rahan Marlow had an in-ring performance of 55, and Woodrow Gunter at 44. While this is the main event, we do have another segment to follow, and that is between Elijah Mays and Rahan Marlow, Junior Heavyweight Champion and Heavyweight Champion. Following a massive victory, Rahan Marlow begins his celebration as reigning WHAM Heavyweight Champion. However, this celebration would be short-lived, as the WHAM Junior Heavyweight Champion Elijah Mays would storm the ring, attacking the heavyweight champ and sending the message loud and clear. He wants his chance to become heavyweight champion, and Elijah Mays has not been quiet about this by any means for the entire time that he's been here in the WHAM, but now he has basically fulfilled all the prerequisites that he has needed to truly challenge for the heavyweight championship, and he is tired of waiting around for that opportunity, and he just gets himself noticed, for lack of better words. So all in all, we get a show rating of 49, and thanks to 4 strong matches at the end of the night, we're able to cover up that poor segment that ended the show. And despite bringing in ticket sales of $5,000, and we still operate at a loss of $1,195. So the next show that we do is not going to get broadcasted so we can make some of this money back. However, it has been a massive episode for the WHAM, and we've got a lot of things in the works, a lot of big changes that are just on the horizon. So thank you for joining. Huge shout out to those subscribed to the Real One tier on Patreon. You guys are awesome, and your support is greatly appreciated. As for everyone else, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take it easy.